Welcome back to this afternoon's continuation of the Budget Committee meeting and the departmental presentations. This afternoon we have 911 and also the City Assessor's Office to go over. I want to point out that unlike the first two this morning, we do have results Minneapolis data for these next departments, I think. And the way that Councilmember Fletcher and I decided that we'd like to start that conversation was to spend just a little bit of time overviewing those results in the past. Eventually, we'd like to better integrate the results into the budget process, but this will kind of help us get on track. We're working hard. We're not where we want to be, but we are in a better place, I think, that will help us make some good decisions about the budget based on the results. So I want to welcome Christine McPherson to give the report on our 911 department. Welcome.
Okay. All right, thank you, Council Chair Palmisano and committee members. So again, my name is Christine McPherson. I'm the interim director for the Minneapolis 911, our Emergency Communications Department, and I am here today to present the 911 department's 2019 budget as recommended by the mayor. So really quick, Minneapolis 911 is the vital link between the public and emergency responders for the city of Minneapolis. We work to collect and disseminate information from 911 callers and provide service in a prompt, courteous, and efficient manner. These actions work to save lives, protect property, and assist the public in their time of need. Our department motto is always here, always ready. So the department organizational chart, this is a much smaller chart than either the police or fire departments, who I know went before me. So this one will probably be a lot more brief. We really have just two areas of operation in the 911 department. Our operations manager and our 911 supervisors work together to support the work and plan the work for all of our 911 dispatchers. That is the heart of the business that we do. They also work closely with the police and fire departments, coordinating communications for all kinds of special events around the city. Our training and quality assurance manager, who is actually here with me today, LaVey Robinson, works with overseeing all the training for new and ongoing training for current employees in the 911 department, in addition to which the quality assurance reviews reports that are done on the work that our staff does. I would also like to point out the Training and Quality Assurance Department in Minneapolis has also worked very closely with the city HR and several 911 partnerships throughout the metro area to create a 911 career pathways program, and we'll talk about that more in the results data, but we've partnered with several agencies to create a 9-month certificate program for populations that may be underrepresented in 911 to better prepare them for a career in 911, or even just to get them thinking or knowing that it is a career possibility. So for 2019, we just have one change item, a training and quality assurance specialist to augment our training staff. This position will fill a critical need to allow that timely performance feedback, and more importantly, even as a recognition to our 911 dispatchers. That timely feedback allows them to better learn the critical skills and receive frequent recognition for the work that we're doing every day, which also improves, or will help improve some of our employee engagement metrics. This is the data on that one, and that really is all I have for this part of the budget presentation. This was our only change item.
Great. I want to let you know I'm working to get up speaker management. It looks a little different on my computer, but I think it should be up. I'm not seeing any immediate questions from my colleagues. I'm curious about the 911 call handling and dispatch operations. I'm curious, how do these answer time statistics that we've seen vary by season? And are there any typical times of day where fewer dispatchers are typically available?
Yeah, so for the last several years, we've utilized a demand-based staffing model. Essentially, obviously, we can never exactly predict the demand for 911 call takers, but we do know historically what our busy times are and when it is less busy. At 4 o'clock in the morning, we do not have anywhere near the need for the number 911 dispatchers working as we do at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. 3 o'clock to about 6 p.m. is our busiest time of the day for 911 calls, generally around the year-round. However, summertime, that is even more amped up. We do about 2,000 911 calls a day in the summer versus maybe just under 1,000 in the colder months of the year.
Thank you. Any other questions from others about 911?
So we do have our results, Minneapolis data, and that report ready to go. That was supposed to have been done in July, but it has been postponed to October 31st. So if there are more questions between then and now, I'm happy to answer them, or else October 31st we'll have our full results presentation.
We do actually, all council members did receive from Andrea Larson last Friday the document with the 2018 departmental results for 911.
Right, so ours was completed, but the meeting had been postponed back in July, so that hasn't been open to discussion yet with council. Right,
so I assume, Ms. McPherson, you'd be open to questions about
yes,
them
absolutely.
here now. Do I see anybody in queue? Do I see somebody getting in queue? Councilmember Fletcher? No.
All right.
All right, then.
That was easy. Thank you.
Yep, I appreciate your coming.
Right.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much.
And with that, the door flies open and the assessor's office comes in. We'll give just a minute for transition and then we'll start up with the assessor's office.
Yeah.
Without further ado, Mr. Todd.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, council members, my name is Patrick Todd. I'm the Minneapolis City Assessor, and with me today is Rebecca Malmquist, who is my director, or who is the director in the office. So I'm here today to present the Assessor's Department 2019 budget as recommended by Mayor Fry on August 15th, 2018. For a department overview, the Assessor's Office serves the Minneapolis taxpayers and residents by valuing and classifying real estate accurately, ethically, and equitably citywide. Property taxes fund core services provided to Minneapolis residents. These services include law enforcement, fire protection, emergency services, education, parks and recreation, and other vital services. The department staff provides information and analysis for internal and external customers, internal and external partners such as yourself, the elected officials, city departments, Minneapolis school districts, Hennepin County Attorney's Office, taxpayer services, the Minnesota Department of Revenue, taxpayers, neighborhood groups, and the media. And this is a very high-level overview of what the Assessor's Office does. The next slide is a flow chart of, or organizational chart, I should say. The Assessor's Office was organized primarily by property type and business line. The Assessor's Office is one of the smallest charter departments in the city. I have 25 appraisers. I have 6 support staff. I have 5 supervisors, and then I have the director, or there's the director and myself as well. So that's who we are. Well, what do? We estimate the market value of every taxable parcel in the city of Minneapolis every year. We door knock between 20 and 25,000 properties every year, updating our property characteristics so that we can have the most accurate information in our CAMA system. We also provide administer all the property tax programs per statute, and most notable is the homestead program, or the relative homestead program, the disabled veterans program, blind and disabled, tax exemptions, just to name a few. In addition to that, what we do, we also do new construction and permits, which keeps us quite busy. We also defend values at multiple levels. Most notable is the local boards, and then in tax court as well. We do taxpayer education, and lastly, we would do neighborhood and community engagement every year. multiple times throughout the year, I should say. And so that's a high level of what we do. The 2019 change items, Mayor Fry recommends 3 important program changes in the assessor's office. These program changes will, 3 things. It'll improve the overall quality and accuracy of our assessment. It'll reduce the levy loss in tax court litigation. And 3, it'll ensure that the department has the resources to meet its goals and objectives throughout the year. Program change item number 1 is a computer-assisted mass appraisal system, or a CAMA system, it's oftentimes referred to. This is a one-time $574,000 capital investment. Currently, we are on an 18-year-old legacy system. It's at the end of its life cycle. I think we've talked about this before. It's not currently supported by the vendor, and the assessments are really not transparent. And if you really look at what was the expectation back in 2000, 2001, and where they are today, in 2000, 2001, I truly believe, because I was around, just having the right value was the most important bit of information for private taxpayers. But today, that's very different. It's not only being right, but they want to see how you're doing it. And that is something that is just not built into our system. So there's a level of trust me, and that if the value is wrong, then let's talk about it. But defending that value, or to explain how that software is actually making every calculation, is just something that we could spend as much money as you wanted to throw at it. It would have to be rebuilt completely. So, and it is, again, it's not supported by the vendor at all. So what would the new CAMA system look like? It's pretty much everything that the current CAMA system is not. So it is actually going to be more accurate in how we value properties. It has more online tools for taxpayers for that community engagement component. It has a mobile capability, which we don't have today. So my staff will be able to do their work in the field instead of taking out paper cards out into the field, write the information, and coming back and actually having to enter the information onto the desktop computer. It's much more transparent in how the assessments are actually calculated. And I think this is, in my opinion, it has more statistical tools to analyze equity and fairness in the assessment. So, and just to give a little bit of background, this is actually a project, the CAMA project, that was approved in 2017, and it was funded by the City Council at that time in 2017 and 2018. So at this point in time, with the mayor's recommended $574,000, our CAMA project is fully funded. We would be able to move forward on the implementation. We still have to work with finance and IT, because the ongoing costs, which are important to recognize as a department expense, still have to be addressed, because there's I'd say a delta of about $300,000 of ongoing expenses that we'll be needing to work with finance and IT on to try to manage. So with that, that is the program change item number 1, which is the CAMA system. And please interrupt me if you have questions as we go, or I can answer them out at the end as well.
No, I'm going to pause you here for Councilmember Fletcher.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. So can you clarify for me, because we had some conversation about this, and I think there's a difference between they offer 2 sort of options, right, where we could either buy the software to host it internally or go to a software as a service model. And there was a little bit of a lack of clarity, I think, in that conversation about how that shifts the upfront costs, what would actually be needed of us this year, as opposed to what are the ongoing costs. So can you clarify sort of which option you're thinking of going with and why, and have you gotten clarity about what the upfront costs are for both of those options versus the ongoing costs?
Sure. Through the chair, Councilmember Fletcher, the ongoing costs we have, when you asked that question, we did go back to the vendor and we had them lay out like a side-by-side comparison between the on-site solution or the cloud solution, which is a SaaS solution. And they are virtually identical as far as dollars go. There's not enough difference on the install and the actual purchase of the software to be noticeable. It's truly in the ongoing costs. What is IT if we were to keep it as a desktop solution, or an in-house, I should say, solution where our IT manages it, versus going to a cloud solution where the vendor then maintains all the information as well as the software and the upgrades and things like that. We don't have final dollars, but we're far enough along to know that if we were to be the host solution within our own system, that will be more expensive on ongoing than the current vendor's SaaS solution. Does that answer your question? Mm-hmm. Yep. So we know that for sure, but we'll definitely have dollars. We're just waiting for IT to come back with their final dollars. We did meet with the vendor over the phone to go line item by line item to make sure that we knew exactly what the hardware requirements are and software requirements to make a final determination on value for the city.
And if I may, I have another question, which is, when will this, if we were to fund this as proposed this year, when does it become operational? When do we actually start using it?
Through the chair, Councilmember Fletcher, we would hope to do a 2021 for pay 2022. So we will have all of 2019 on the existing camera system and all of 2020, but we would have it up and running for the 2021 assessment. So it'll take us about 2 years to do a complete install and implementation, which is fast, believe it or not, compared to what other municipalities are currently going through right now. So, but we think it's very manageable and doable.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Seeing nobody else in queue, I will ask, is there any way to speed that up?
Madam Chair, absolutely. The sooner we can engage in a contract, we've had discussions with the vendor, and we can as soon as we can sign a contract, for the most part, we can get started. They have literally been holding a spot for us as they've been picking new clients and taking on new contracts. They know that because we are a large jurisdiction and a jurisdiction that they would very much like to have, they would not want to lose this contract if they could not meet our expectations on that. So we are as soon as we get the funding, there is the last step, which would be contract negotiation, and then once that's done, we are optimistic that we would be in contract. We would sign a contract first quarter of next year, but if we could get into a contract this year, we would be very pleased, and I know the vendor would be very pleased. But our business plan right now is hopefully to have the contract signed, the funding in place by Q1 of next year.
Thank you. Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to check about the amount of appeals that have happened. If I'm not mistaken, this year there were a lot more appeals than historically. Yeah. So do you think that from your perspective, does this help to get to those challenges of why people were appealing so much, or do you think that there are some, like there's this as well as policy solutions to be able to help with lowering the amount of appeals moving forward?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Through the chair, Councilmember Cunningham, great question. I think it's a little bit of everything. I hate to say that. I think that the software itself can be better. Again, we're using logics and analytics from 2000. So the technology today, the analytics will definitely get better. I think that the market has changed so significantly, and I have a slide to show that since like 2013, we've seen our tax base go from 32 billion to 52 billion. And so when you have successive years of fast growth and then taxes going up along with it, at some point people say they want a timeout. They want to see if the assessor's value is really right. I think that's a part of it as well, because a number of the people that we actually went out and met, we were able to demonstrate or show them that the value actually was correct. So we had more properties that we actually got dismissed where the property owner walked away and said, okay, I guess you're right. More of those than the ones that appealed. And then lastly, I think that with the new system, if people can go online and really see how their value was arrived at and see other comparable sales, that would appease them. They would go, oh, I guess I don't need to call the assessor because I can get this information at my fingertips. So I think those three things really would mitigate if we have the new system that would help us going forward. Because as long as we cannot be transparent, we're going to have more and more of these same problems. So,
thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Chair Montesano. So I've been talking with the assessor's office on an issue that I know Councilmember Goodman has raised over the last couple of years, which is the way that we are assessing rental property in the city is using building sale value, and that's driving up rent in our same buildings that we're trying to preserve through millions of dollars of city funding and preserving naturally occurring affordable housing. So I know that we have state law to comply with, but I'm just concerned overall about the sort of two trends and how they're at odds with our goal of stabilizing housing in neighborhoods across the city, and particularly for more than half of the city who are renters, who are very sensitive to price fluctuations in their rent. So can you speak to how the technology would impact any of those, you know, how we're assessing rental properties? I still am hopeful that we can find some solutions that isn't us just creating like an application process through a 4D program that you go in on the back end and try to counteract this trend that we're seeing in so many NOAA properties being assessed at very high values.
Sure. Through the chair, Councilmember Bender, you raise a really good point. It's a similar observation when people would say, I want to fix up my house, but then you come after me and you raise my value and now I can't afford my house, but yet you want me to fix up my house. You know, you can't have it both ways, Minneapolis, okay? So similarly, would the new system help mitigate that? The new system would allow us to provide more tools, more information, so people could go online and apply for programs that they might not currently be able to have access to. So that would definitely be within the toolbox that this new software would be able to provide. As far as the actual evaluation process, we're going to be more precise. I think through property tax programs, property tax relief programs is maybe the best avenue, because when we start making broad brush changes to, let's say, a duplex or a triplex, not every duplex or triplex owner is there a problem or is there maybe an inequity. But we can definitely get, if with a property tax program similar to the M1 PR, but not exclusively, where people can apply, it's the people that have the need that then could definitely benefit, because just to say we're going to try to value the duplex, triplex, or those across the board, we're going to definitely benefit some, but some are going to benefit that really didn't need the benefit. And so I would say that being at the legislature advocating for programs that people would apply for, either through tax returns or the renter's credit, is the most efficient way, and we're really targeting people that really need the help the most. Does that help? Okay.
Thank you for that comment and that additional conversation around it. I know that came up last week too. Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's not an answer. The question was, will this system change the way that we value rental property? And so it sounds like the answer is no. The answer is the new system will allow us to help people who have rental property and low-income renters figure out how to access programs that could potentially help with their taxes, but the system itself is not going to solve the problem of income-based valuation that we don't do for single-family homes that we do for rental. So let me try to ask the question in a better way. Single-family homes are valued basically not at what the rent is that I could get if I rented my single-family home, but what its value is. And rental property seems to be valued based on income, how much income they can get off of rents that are there, not based on just the simple value as if some average person is living there. What can we do to address that problem? Because that seems to be the problem. And I tell the story all the time, and you've heard it from me too, and I'll tell it one more time today. I have a guy in my ward who owns a building that's a 12-plex, and he has his rents that are really low. And when the assessor came to his house, to his building to assess it, he said, well, how much do you get in rent? And he told them, and the assessor actually said to this gentleman, you should raise your rents because you can get more in rent in Lowry Hill. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to value your property based on how much you can get in rent, not how much the building is actually worth as if average people live there. So he was the reason why I brought forward this 4D issue, because and he was one of the first 20 people to get into the 4D program, and it's all good for him. but it kind of doesn't address all of the other issues that others have raised, which is why are we required under the law to value for income potential? I see a little shaking of the head, versus just what the value of the building would be for sale. Why do we take into consideration how much rent is being charged when we don't do that for single-family homes? I'm sure I can rent my single-family home for, well, maybe not, but maybe more than my mortgage. My mortgage, you probably can figure that out for me, but probably more than my mortgage payment. I would guess when I look on Zillow, it looks like I can rent my house for $2,900 a month, but I am not paying that in my mortgage. So that's what we're trying to get at, is how do we get away from income-based, revenue-generating based valuation and more towards what the value of the apartment would be? Did that explain it slightly better?
I understand perfectly. I'm trying to explain it in a way that, so this is where we run into some problems, where based on an individual's ability to, or an individual's ownership and management style can have a unintended consequence. If I have two 12-plexes or two duplexes side by side, I have one person charging $1,500 a month per unit, and that's the market, and I have the exact same building next door, and they're charging $500 a unit. The statute would say that because they are, that piece of real estate looks identical, they should be valued the same way. And now the hard part is that, like you say, the naturally occurring, we should value that one that the property owner wants to provide more affordable housing. But at a statutory level, we don't have the luxury to say, because you're doing this, then we're going to provide. But that's where the 4D program provides that. So it's really through the property tax classification system that allows property owners to have a much less rent and really provide that affordable housing and get the benefit, where the other person who's getting market rent is paying the taxes based on that market rent. And then when we take it to the next level, when that particular, you have the two particular buildings that are identical in every way, we're most concerned because we're measured on when that particular property sells, what was the assessed value? And if we're having, well, we nailed, we got the one that had market rents because we based it on market rents. We got that one right. But this one, we had an artificially lower rent because, generally speaking, when property owners sell their property, they might not want to pay high taxes or have that high value when they're owning it. But when it comes to selling, if it's worth 200, they're going to ask 200, not something less, because if we had a value that was less because we were going with less than market rents, we would value it at less. They're still going to ask for whatever the market's going to prevail, and then we would be off on our sales ratio, which that is exactly how we're being measured as far as the equity within the city of Minneapolis. Does that explain it? Does that help? Because again, when properties sell, if we have an artificially lower value because the owner kept those rents low, when they sell and they sell it at market, our ratios will be horrific on that. So, but that's where the 4D program takes care of that. So,
Madam Chair, Mr. City Assessor, Mr. Todd, yes, that explains to me that we're not making valuations based on income potential, but by market value. Then why would we have an assessor tell the owner to raise the rent? I mean, that's what prompted this whole drama in the first place, was the assessor's advice to the constituent that you can get more for rent, so you should just raise your rent, instead of maybe an approach that said, good for you for helping provide affordable housing, you should be in the 4D program. Because if we think that all of these people in the city who are providing naturally occurring affordable housing are thinking through and looking online to see what programs that they qualify for, they're not. They're just simply saying, how can I pay my taxes? I have to make my rent adjust to that. So perhaps it's in a way we communicate, assessors communicate with property owners on this issue. So it sounds like the side-by-side comparison is, I think, illustrative in that the value is the value, and if you're going to rent to get that value back, that's one direction you're going to go. And if you're not, because you're providing affordable housing, you're going to go in a different direction. Then we shouldn't be telling people, raise your rent, because we're going to raise your taxes. You should say, boy, you're doing a good thing. You should apply for this program more specifically than making them try to find it. Because it's hard to get people to find these programs. They're afraid of us. They don't like it when the assessor comes. They're not excited about the concept of an energy audit. They just want to do their own thing and provide affordable housing. So to be told, raise your rent, is kind of contrary to what these NOAA property owners, they're trying to steer clear of us. They don't want to get entangled with us.
Correct. And I do apologize, that was inappropriate for my staff to make those recommendations. And I think you are absolutely right, with where we need to do a better job educating the property owners with the available programs, the property tax relief programs, the senior citizen tax deferral, and really be educators and have that information available, so we can provide them with that and they can make the best informed decision. So.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. And to echo Councilmember Goodman's concerns, the maddening thing on top of all of this is that I understand that the way that we do commercial property is based on actual rents rather than sort of potential rents or hypothetical rents, right? So if an office building downtown is a third vacant or has their retail space vacant, that lowers their assessment, whereas that wouldn't happen with a residential duplex, right? And so I understand that that's a quirk of state law, but it does feel certainly out of step with kind of what we're trying to achieve, I think, at the city, to not be able to lower somebody's property taxes based on their actual rents that they're actually collecting in the residential markets, but then to be forced to do that in commercial. I understand that we're often sued over that, and the people pressing those lawsuits are successful. So not to steer us too much into a policy conversation, I'll steer us back to the question of CAMA and this upgrade. How does the technology address tracking the actual rent in the commercial space so that we're able to do those assessments? Are we tracking, will this give us a tool for tracking retail and commercial vacancy?
Through the chair, Councilmember Fletcher, I believe the new CAMA system does have a module for tracking and tracking rents and tracking vacancies. We currently do that today, but it's on a separate spreadsheet to do our analysis. And I believe the next system, if I'm not mistaken, allows you to say, well, we're going to put X% on the market and X% on the income producing capabilities. And that is not an uncommon methodology when we actually go to court. So we'll do an income approach, we'll do a sales comparison approach, and we'll do a cost approach. And at the very end, you can reconcile and you can say, I'm going to put all my weight on the market, or all my weight on the sales or the income approach, or if it's a newer building, all the cost. Or you could say, I'm going to do a 60%, I feel confident with the data, 60% of my value is derived from the market, and 40% is going to be based on the income. I believe this next system does have that flexibility and capability to do that. But if it doesn't, we can make sure that that's one of the priorities that we ask for. Because if we can somewhat do it on a spreadsheet, there's no reason in my mind why they couldn't be doing it in a CAMA system. But that is not a piece of the module that was demonstrated, so I'm kind of hesitant to say that it was absolutely. But and then just out of correction, I don't mean to correct you, Councilmember, but when it comes to vacancies, whether it's commercial, industrial, apartment, we still look at what is the market vacancy for a particular building. If a building is performing significantly outside those parameters, so let's say it does have 40% vacancy, then we have to somehow reconcile, why is this building, when everybody else is running at a 15 or 17 or 20%, are you running at a 40? Is it a dated building? Is it a functional problem? Is it that the floor plates are not easily conducive to what the current market is asking for? And so actuals, and again, actuals do definitely take into consideration, but we always start first with what is the market, and then we compare them to the market, and then beyond that, they have to demonstrate to us, why is your building performing? Is it management or is it a physical characteristic? And then hopefully, if it's a physical characteristic, we're taking care of that so that the future values are in line. Or in the case of let's say a Macy's, it's a repurpose. It went from a retail department store to something completely different. So. Any other questions?
Thank you. Councilmember Ellison, you were in queue. No. I do want to put a pin in this, as we're starting to do here with budget. I'd like to put a pin in the CAMA system just from a structurally balanced budget perspective. I'd like to find a way to see, can we get an ongoing appropriation into this budget cycle. So I look forward to working with my colleagues and those interested to try to find room in that. Some of the trust in government and transparency in government starts with property taxes, as we saw, especially after this past year's assessments came out, and we saw a major increase in property values across the entire city. So I'm just going to kind of work to take that offline, and I can work with anybody who's interested in doing that. I'll let you continue your presentation. There's nobody else in queue right now.
Yep. And my staff and I are absolutely available at any time to meet with you and talk about the expectations and how to go forward on a project like this, because this is a very important project in our office as well. Essential operating expenses is the second program change item. This is, as the cities continue to grow, there are just certain core expenses that just really have been going faster. So parking. So my staff, we don't have fleet cars. So every one of my staff drives their own car. We do, as an exchange for them driving, we say we'll provide you with parking. And that's a fixed cost to my department. And the cost of parking has gone up faster than our budgetary adjustments. And so part of it is market. The other part is the fact that because Minneapolis is growing and because we have more new construction, more permits, more sales, more parcel count, we're driving far more than we used to as well. And so the mileage is up, and so these line items within our budget are not sufficient to really to run a balanced budget. So our mileage is running short, our parking is running short. We're oftentimes taking dollars from other line items in order to make this to meet this expense. In addition to the parking and to the mileage, we're also running with the city asking to be more transparent and asking for more community engagement. We're really doing the best job we can. And so we were very successful that when we started to put notifications in the local newspapers that the assessor's office is going to be working in that neighborhood, we're sending out postcards to property owners. Every property owner saying, we'll be knocking your door. If you'd like to set up an appointment, please give us a call. But at least let them know that someone's going to be knocking on the door, might be walking around their building. The public has been very receptive, has positively been receptive to this, to the point where, somebody is showing up and saying, hi, I'm the assessor. It makes them leery. But having been prior noticed, we're getting positive feedback. But when you do it, go the extra mile and you try to do that, it's costing more postage, more paper, more printing, more binding, things like that. And so again, this line item, as we've been doing more, we're just running short on these expense line items. And then last but not least is cell phones. And this last year, so in 2017, the 25 appraisers that are out working in the field all now have cell phones, which they did not have prior to this. And actually, the only time they had cell phones was their own personal cell phone. And it's really, I'm probably 5 years behind, when it comes to cell phones. They can reply back to taxpayers, emails, phone mails. They can schedule appointments in the field with taxpayers. They can provide so much information. They're far more efficient working in the field with a cell phone than literally they had either the flip phone or in some cases they just had their own personal phone, which isn't really appropriate. As a major city like Minneapolis, we should be providing them with the proper tools to work in the field. So when we purchased 25 cell phones and engaged in those contracts, that's a new expense over and above. And again, one of those that unless I can get an adjustment in the line item, there's really no money to account for that. And in hindsight, what we would end up doing to pay for something like this is delay hiring staff for a little bit longer, and then you'd have the dollars in order to pay for some of these projects. So the essential operating expenses, it's $67,000. It is an ongoing expense, but for the most part, those are the expenses that we had identified that were just year after year, we're running short. And those are the reasons why. Last but not least, the third program change item is a principal appraiser. So Minneapolis, like we said, and I think all the council members know, is a growing city. It's had 7 consecutive years of $1 billion or more in new construction. It's also had a tax-based growth of 59%. The levy has gone up 16% as well since 2013, and so as values have escalated at 59%, and as the levy has increased 16%, it's just natural that appeals are going to go up as well. And as you take a look at the chart here, you'll see that since 2014, where it was just under $20 million of property taxes, and that's the Minneapolis share of it. It was just under $20 million. Now it's at $69.9 million currently under appeal. And that's a significant amount of dollars, I'll be honest with you. Let me back up. So the request for the principal appraiser is $135,000 for the first year, which there's a technology component. That's why it drops down to $130,000 thereafter. So with this additional principal appraiser, tax appeals and tax court specifically is some of the most complex, most stressful, and most time-consuming function within my department. With this additional principal appraiser, the department can dedicate more resources to ensure that the quality and the accuracy of the initial assessment is right the first time. With this principal appraiser, the department has more resources to write these complex appraisals for tax court. With this principal appraiser, the department's in a better position to reduce the levy loss in tax court. And I truly believe that, and I can't speak for the city attorney, but I would imagine she would probably agree that the more resources you have in the city attorney's office, the more efficient and more successes you can have. And we find that that would be the same logic as well. The more people we can dedicate to tax court litigation, the more successful we will be. Last two notes, with this principal appraiser, and it really is something that we wrestle with in my office, we reduce the risk of staff burnout. We have, again, a significant number. We have the most number of tax court appeals in the metropolitan area. And in addition to the risk of staff burnout, we're hoping to improve staff retention. And then last but not least, with $69.9 million under appeal, this line item, this $135,000, is 0.2% of that total expenditure, or not the expenditure, but of the levy. And when we talk about tax court litigation, one very successfully defended value can pay for that position for years. One dismissal that you might not have been able to get could pay for that position 10 times over. So we're talking $69 million. In my opinion, it's a very good investment in the city to be able to make sure that we aren't making decisions because we don't have the resources in order to defend the value. And I think with that, that's the end of my presentation. I just want to say in closing that I can assure you that Mayor Fry's proposed budget of a new camera system, new operating expenses, and additional appraiser will improve the overall quality and accuracy of our assessment. It'll also reduce the levy loss in tax court litigation, and it'll also ensure that the department has the resources to meet its goals and objectives. And it sounds like it's a win-win for everyone. So with that, thank you for your time, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Todd. On your last slide, you pointed out the $189 million of estimated taxes under appeal, and you mentioned the Twin Cities market, but am I to assume that that's the full state of Minnesota under that next court of appeals, or the blue line, so to speak, when it says overall tax, is that in the state of Minnesota?
So let me, there we go. That is just, that is,
Hennepin County.
that's the city of Minneapolis, and that's just the total amount of levy or property taxes under appeal. But because we share a levy,
I see.
is that what you said, ma'am?
No, I thought that was in proportion to what the state was facing in appeals. So what you're saying is the blue line is the overall taxes that we as a city
Correct.
are receiving, and
Right.
the orange line is what is under appeal.
Correct. It would be disingenuous if I really said that the city's liability under appeal was 189 million, because we only get a portion of that. So we broke it out to show what our level of risk is versus the county and the school board.
I see. Thank you. I don't see any questions in queue. Any questions from my colleagues? Nope. Thank you for your time. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Before people get up and leave here on the dais, we have just enough people. Thank you for joining this afternoon to make a motion to receive and file both the 911 presentation and also the tax assessor's office. So all those in favor to receive and file these presentations this afternoon, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. With that, we're done with our agenda for today, and we will adjourn. Thanks.